21-year-old Stephen Edward Riley Jr. would start to
A
get
North Dakota
violent.
woman was arrested Monday for allegedly slipping her boyfriend a fatal dose of antifreeze.
What would you do if you were promised a $30 million inheritance? In the case of Stephen Riley, a loving and supportive boyfriend, he envisioned vacations and even living in a castle with his girlfriend, Kenoyer. September 5th, 2023. Loaded into the back of an ambulance, barreling down the highway. Shafts of multicolored lights flew past the face of an unconscious Stephen Riley. Ina had called emergency services and claimed that her boyfriend had drunk antifreeze 15 minutes before she placed the call. Being hurried through a busy hospital, Stephen was brought into the emergency room. The room was buzzing with energy as doctors moved around, preparing equipment and life support. However, when they hooked up the pulse oximeter, it was clear that he was dead on arrival. At first, it seemed like a tragic accident. Perhaps he had mistakenly ingested antifreeze. But as the investigation unfolded, it became clear this was no accident. This was an act of murder. In this video, I will explore the details of this heartbreaking case, the timeline of events, the court proceedings, the inconsistencies in the stories, and everything in between. Poor, broke, financially unstable. These were the words that described the situation Stephen and Ina were living in. Despite their struggles, it was evident that they loved each other. Through thick and thin, they supported one another for several years. They seemed like the ideal couple. However, there was one thing that troubled Ina deeply. She was financially dependent on Stephen. If he were to leave or die, she would have no means to support herself. Despite their hardships, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. The sun shone down on their small street as cars passed by and the distant melody of children playing filled the air. A knock at the door broke the stillness. A mysterious lawyer had come to inform them of an extraordinary opportunity. One of Stephen's distant relatives in England had reportedly died of a heart attack. Thanks to an unusual order of inheritance, they were poised to receive $30 million and the castle where this relative had lived. However, there was a catch. The lawyer needed access to Stephen's bank account and personal details to facilitate the transfer of funds. In the modern age, most people know better than to trust strangers promising impossible sums of money. It's the oldest scam in the book. However, desperation clouded Stephen and Ina's judgment. They were older. Ina was 46 and Stephen was 51, and perhaps less familiar with modern scams. Believing the promise, they took the bait. Stephen agreed to provide the lawyer with his life savings, which the lawyer claimed were needed to pay bank service fees, cover legal charges, and navigate the red tape surrounding inheritance law. The lawyer assured them he had already secured agreements with U.S. banks and laws, but he would need to travel to the U.K. on September 3rd to finalize the process. Stephen asked to meet with the lawyer on that day to ensure everything was legitimate. On the day of the meeting, Stephen prepared to see the lawyer. Ina made him a sweet tea to take along as he drove. Confident that things were progressing as planned, Stephen went on with his day, unaware of the danger he faced. Beneath the surface of their relationship, tension had been building. Stephen had confided in friends that he wanted to leave Ina. He couldn't continue the relationship, but intended to split the inheritance, ensuring she would be financially stable after his departure. This decision, however, would never come to pass. 2 days later, Stephen collapsed and died on his way to the ER. He had been poisoned with antifreeze. When investigators searched the house, they found bottles of antifreeze open and scattered across counters and the floor. During a more thorough search, police discovered a glass Coors Light bottle, a plastic mug, and an old Windex bottle, all containing traces of antifreeze. Ina was questioned by police. She claimed that Stephen had committed suicide, hiding himself in a room and drinking antifreeze until he died. However, this story didn't hold up. Why would bottles of antifreeze be left out in the open if he had been hiding his actions? Moreover, there were glaring inconsistencies in Ina's account, as though she were piecing the story together on the spot. After 2 months of thorough investigation, Ina was arrested on October 30th by the Minot Police Department. Ina was held for nearly a year before facing trial. She was ultimately sentenced to 25 years in prison, followed by 10 years of supervised probation. Additionally, she was ordered to pay $3,455 in restitution to Stephen Riley's family. The prosecution argued for a first-degree murder charge, presenting evidence such as the cups and bottles containing antifreeze found in Ina and Stephen's home. Forensic toxicology reports confirmed the presence of ethylene glycol, a toxic component of antifreeze, in Stephen's system. This evidence, combined with the tension in their relationship and Ina's financial motive, painted a clear picture of premeditated murder. The defense hinged their case on Ina's mental health. They argued that she was not in a sound state of mind and acted irrationally under the stress of their financial situation. Despite these claims, Ina eventually broke down. She admitted to her actions and pled guilty to all charges. This guilty plea limited the defense's ability to present alternative theories or arguments. Looking back at the case, several factors contributed to this tragedy. Fearing that Stephen would leave her without financial support, Ina likely felt as though her world was collapsing. Over the years, Stephen had become the sole source of financial stability in her life. The thought of losing him, coupled with the false promise of a $30 million inheritance, pushed her into a state of desperation. This desperation turned into greed. Ina convinced herself that legally she was entitled to Stephen's assets as his common-law wife. Believing this, she began poisoning his drinks: soda, sweet tea, coffee. Over time, Stephen unknowingly consumed lethal doses of antifreeze, leading to his slow and painful death. Tragically, the $30 million inheritance was nothing but a scam. The distant relative didn't exist, and the promise of wealth was a fabrication. Moreover, North Dakota, where they lived, doesn't recognize common-law marriages. Even if the money had been real, Ina would not have inherited it. Her actions, driven by a false sense of entitlement, led to Stephen's death and her eventual downfall. The tragic case of Stephen Riley illustrates how desperation and greed can lead to irreversible consequences. Ina Kenoyer's misguided actions, fueled by financial instability and the false promise of an inheritance, resulted in a deadly betrayal. Despite her attempts to cover her tracks, the evidence, from the antifreeze in their home to the inconsistencies in her story, revealed the truth. Ina's conviction serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of unchecked desperation and the consequences of succumbing to greed. This case highlights the importance of seeking help in times of crisis and being wary of too good to be true offers that prey on vulnerability.